So this is very crucial and deep dive session where we will be taking help of the two gentlemen sitting with us. They both have distinguished career building India's infrastructure. Shishir Priyadarshi, after quitting his bureaucrat's job, he went to Geneva uh, initially to help India build the trade diplomacy, and later on he joined WTO as a diplomat there and helped the global humanity and build the foundations of globalization for last 2 decades. And after returning back, he is now with the Adani Group. He's curating a think tank for them, Chintan Research Foundation. Akhilesh Srivastava ji, he is from ITS India. Prior to that, he was helping Indian infrastructure through various digital interventions. FASTag was his brainchild. So all the queries around FASTag, the glitches you face, you can direct it to him. But to start the conversation, Shishirji, you have a diverse understanding. I want to understand from you that, we have a target of roughly around $45 trillion economy. And this can't happen without manufacturing. And one of the foundations of manufacturing is logistics and finding the go-to market. And what we understand is that roughly 5 to 6 years back, our logistic cost was roughly around 18%. Thanks to GST and some of the reforms and investment into infrastructure, it has come down to 14%. But it is still very high if we compare it with Southeast Asia, if we compare it with US, Europe, China. If we have to become, a $45 trillion economy, manufacturing needs to play a role, logistics need to play a role. You are wearing two hats, as a thinker at CRF, plus somebody who has spent all his life, mirroring the global trade markets, trade lines and others. Help us in understanding that what needs to be done in short term, mid term and long term to achieve, cutting down this logistic cost.
Akhilesh, thank you so much, and thank you also to the group for getting me here. I'm going to merge two issues that you've raised and perhaps answer them one. India's own developmental aspirations to become a 45 million trillion economy, as also what I saw happen internationally in my 25 odd years with the World Trade Organization. Importance of manufacturing. No matter what we strive to do, if we are to have a sustained GDP growth of 7 to 8%, probably more, manufacturing will obviously play one of the most important roles. But trust me, manufacturing is only one side of the story. What you're manufacturing is only going to get picked up provided it's more competitive than what the rest of the world is manufacturing. So we've not only got to keep our own pace of manufacturing up, we've also got to ensure that we're extremely competitive. And while a lot of things are not necessarily in our hands, which is how our competitors are doing, but one thing is certainly in our hands is the logistical cost component of manufacturing. And Akhilesh, you're absolutely right. It used to be about 18% of our GDP as the logistical cost. It has come down to about 13 to 14%. But if I look at the global average, which is what we in the WTO would look at, it's down to 7 or 8%. So we are still close to about twice the logistical average, cost average for the world. Now, what can be done? Again, picking from some of the international examples that one saw. Look, one is clearly invest in infrastructure. We've got to have the best possible infrastructure. But it doesn't stop there. It's got to be, the key word for me at least is seamless infrastructure. You could have a road link which leads to a rail link. There needs to be seamlessness there. You could have a road which leads to the port. You've got to have seamlessness there. So it's not just the highest quality and efficient infrastructure, but it's also got to be seamless. The second thing which I think we really need to work very, very strongly towards is technology in logistics. You not only got to ensure that a lot of the things that are still being done, I must say, through somewhat outmoded ways, needs to be completely modernized. But part of that, again, the hidden word is create digital platforms. You ask any of the people here, for any logistics, there are umpteen number of partners. And unless and until they're all on the same digital platform, your costs are going to go up. And third, where you've got to put the logistical responsibility is on the private sector. The government does a great deal, no doubt about it, but you can't just keep looking at the government to provide all these solutions. It's got to be the private sector which has got to lead this march. It's got to be the private sector which has got to, be ahead in this challenge, and they must feel accountable, not just for their own interests, but national too. Time permitting, I can share some of the international examples with you later.
Shishir, thank you. Akhilesh, if I can come to you, he has given you a very good cue to start with, digital, you have dealt with digital aspect of infrastructure. When we see the World Bank's various observation, India's ports, India's highways, India's even civil aviation requires a lot of digital investments. If I could, seek your experience, what is stopping India from, rolling out on a big scale? Earlier in the day, Peter Albis, when he was talking, he was saying that Abu Dhabi, it has a face recognition system. You can seamlessly go in, and they all are Indian players. It's there in Singapore. India is just beginning to start with it. But, what is the lag? It can't be the talent. Indian talent is implementing it elsewhere. So what is the issue you face, when you roll out the digital stuff?
Yeah, thanks, Akhilesh, for wonderful question. I will say you asked, what is the hitch? Why we are not? So I will slightly take it back and say it's not that we are lacking, considering the point where we started. So you have to look at the holistic things. It's not like Abu Dhabi or just comparing with smaller countries like Singapore and say that we are lagging. We have to look at the context, Indian context itself. For example, as you mentioned at the beginning, I was involved with the implementation of fast track program on national highway for the collection of toll. The sheer number of fast tag issued on the vehicles, the number of vehicles we have in India, the number of daily transaction, the figures when we used to discuss with the World Bank and McKinsey and other top consulting companies, it's a mind-boggling figures. They used to say, how it can be. But India did it. We are the FASTag is now adopted by almost 97% of people moving on the national highways and for the. So similarly, you look at the UPI. So UPI has, in fact, India is a leader on that. Aadhaar, you look at the CoWIN, so many digital platforms. So India has transformed from the software developer country to a digital platform provider country. Now, coming to the second aspect which you said, where are we lacking, and why are we slow in adoption of this? So, firstly, we are not slow, we are gearing up, but our acceleration is very fast. And these infrastructure, for example, say the face recognition at airports, we have developed, we didn't go the way it is in Abu Dhabi and other places. What we developed is a very low cost or the cost-effective solution, DigiYatra. It's a more or less same. You just stand in front of a kiosk and the boarding pass is read and through seamless entry to the airports are there. Gradually it's going to all the airports. Similarly, the logistics, again, so two problems actually, if I say, which are preventing a scaling is one. Talent is of course there, the expertise are there. We are doing it also. But last mile connectivity remains a challenge. As of now, what Ms. Shishir also said, that developing a good highway, perfect, developing a good port to collect these things and put into the ship or the aircraft for the, but still for getting things from the manufacturing hubs far-flung into the remote places and bringing them that cost, warehousing cost, still FASTag has provided some convenience, but it's not free flow as in other countries. So these things, of course, affect it. And I'm sure single step like FASTag reduce the logistic point by 2.5%. With these things which are coming up like satellite-based tolling or multi-lane free flow tolling, the concept which, so I preside this ITS India Forum, the basic purpose of this ITS Forum is this, intelligent transport system. So what government is also now realizing and trying to do, recklessly making highway or infrastructure, railways may have certain limitations. We have to increase the throughput. We have to make it more connected, more involved, connected vehicle, and these things can improve the efficiency of transportation better, or the mobility, make it safer and connected and take it forward. So if, yeah.
So Shishir, if I could come to you, you know, one is that reforming things at home. Second is also, you know, getting more regional, you know, integration into the systems, you know, getting into multilaterals. We have not been able to join RCEP, or we chose not to join RCEP. But, you know, there are issues with WTO as well. You know, now the biggest contributor, America, is creating more trouble for WTO's life. So if you see from the India's perspective, you know, what is the future of, you know, these type of integrations? Do we see more such negotiations coming forth, or now we are getting into the era of bilaterals and planning our trade, you know, through those modes?
You know, it's an extremely evolving landscape out there. You look at multilateralism, and you probably, you know, each week find a new policy derivative that you'd not taken into account so far. I'm only quoting from something that I wrote and which was published in the Economic Times yesterday. I've actually called it, you know, between the tariff and a hard place. The fact is, any country, especially a country striving to become a developed economy in 2 decades or so, you've got to keep all your options open. No one's a permanent enemy and no one's a permanent foe. Similarly, no mechanism, you embrace bilateralism where required, and you equally embrace multilateralism where required. Now the crux would be, you know, and the jury is probably out there that whether we should have been part of RCEP or whether we did wisely. The jury is soon going to be also asking India, if the US decides to withdraw from WTO like it has done from the World Health Organization, and trust me, I was hearing the question just in the previous panel, if the US wants to impose reciprocal tariffs which are over and beyond what the US has committed in its bound rate of schedule in the World Trade Organization, then the US would only be able to do it provided it walks out of WTO. As long as it's part of WTO, the concept of reciprocal tariffs does not exist. Obviously, the country affected would have to take the US to court in the WTO, and that's a separate issue that the appellate body is at the moment defunct. But the point you're making, Akhilesh, is I think the answer lies if you look at what component of global trade was made of intermediate goods 10 years back, and what component of global trade intermediate goods constitute today. Today, you've got about 50 to 60% of global trade which is not in finished goods. And the only way you can be part of those regional or global value chains is if you are integrated. Which brings us exactly to this. If your logistical system is good enough, and if you've got the reforms that, again, you were so importantly mentioning, and I would call reduction of tariffs, actually, reduction of tariffs to facilitate imports so that they could become part of your value chains of export. You know, as long as we see imports as something harming domestic production, the political will to reduce imports will be limited. But once you start seeing imports as an absolute necessary ingredient for the export that you want the country to do, then you're going to get into reform. So, in short, what I'm saying is, we keep our options open. It's better to be inside. if you really push me to say, is better to be inside an organization, inside a grouping, inside an entity, and mold some of those negotiations rather than walk away from it. Regionalism is here to stay.
So Shishir, if I could take you deeper into the conversation, we are at a very sweet spot. We want to see a hockey stick like a growth trajectory, and suddenly we see a headwind coming towards us, because if we are getting into this reciprocal tariff narrative, that means many of the PLIs and many of the Atmanirbhar stories have to either take a backseat, or we may have to recast the story. So in that context, if we have to reorient our Viksit Bharat plan, or a plan for becoming $45 trillion economy, or if we chop it to maybe next decade become $15 trillion economy, how much recalibration do you think India needs to make? Because this gentleman is around for next 4 years. So we may expect some more disruptions.
Look, headwinds are going to happen. There's just no doing away with headwinds. You look at the last 6 months. Have there been headwinds? Absolutely. And again, an important point, let me share with you in complete transparency and frankness and honesty. When we are in India and we talk about India's growth story, all of us around here will probably, we'll all pat ourselves on the back. Very proud of it. You'll even hear a lot of global leaders saying, fantastic. But trust me when I say this, not everyone is happy with India's growth story. And why would you be? If you had a wonderful bipolar world where two countries or sets of countries got together and decided things, and suddenly you've got this huge multipolarity coming in, where lots of other countries, including probably sometimes even led by India, are becoming part of the high table. They don't like it. And if you can't do things if you can't do things directly, you'll resort to indirectly. So it's very clear, the key word, and I tell you that's a book which has made such a lasting impression on me, it's called Kicking Away the Ladder. And its title says it all. You reach a certain level of growth, and then you want to kick away that very ladder by which you grew. So you're going to face those headwinds. Is recalibration required? Not at the moment. If at all any recalibrations required, it's got to be in much more of our very specific planning to reach that goal. Simply by all of us in all these gatherings talking about Viksit at 47 is not going to make us Viksit at 47. All of us come here and talk about manufacturing and agriculture and services and reform. That's not going to make us Viksit. Keep a step ahead. And what do I mean by a step ahead? Just 1 or 2 examples. One would be, let our entire focus in the next 10 years, 2 5-year plans, be on tier 2, tier 3 cities. Focus there. Let our entire focus be on that 50% of the work population that is still not fully utilized. Why don't we have all our women fruitfully and productively employed? We are missing that. These are the kind of things that we should think ahead. So right now, don't calibrate, be prepared for headwinds, but be prepared. It's going to be a tough fight to get there by 47.
Akhilesh,
Yeah.
I am also very keen to understand your view. Especially we are seeing many of the disruptions, but if digitalization happens, a lot of startups would be looking at funds coming from Western world, and Western world is in a bit of dilemma right now, which way to look at. So how do you see digital innovation getting some impact, especially from the infrastructure point of view? That because we are at a very critical stage, and if disruption happens and people back out, or even a cleaner aspect of digital stuff, that also get a backed up. So what sort of recalibration is happening in your side?
Yeah, so there are 2 things basically. When we talk about the digital, it got 2 powers, the software and the hardware. Fortunately, India is doing good in the current software system, if I say, but not in the deep technologies like AI and all, We are trying to do, but we are still not at the top of the ladder. It has to be enhanced. In the current scenario, if you talk in the current context, it's okay. We are reasonably good, and that's not a price sensitive. We have a good talent pool, and very quickly we can scale it up and develop any kind of platform, and that's what is happening also. But the problem comes when you talk about the complete digitalization, then that is a combination of hardware as well, where what Shishir was just mentioning makes us, and some calibration or some tightening of belt required to be there. Because we are not at the manufacturing hub of the technological equipment. Our reliance on imported equipments for the which are required for a digital infra are far higher. That is to be, though we are doing, making semiconductor, trying to make it here. We are trying to make most hardware required. But still, a lot need to be done. If the scenario changes, what headwind or tailwind, what Mr. is saying, if that affects these kind of treaties, and then probably we may find ourselves in a slightly difficult spot with respect to this. So the preparedness of the government has to be towards that. Software, that's okay. We heard recently Honorable Minister saying that in next 8 months, India will come up with our own AI-based platform. So let's say not 8 months, but in a year also, if we come up with something like DeepSeek or the ChatGPT of US, it's okay. So we are, that's reasonably okay. But hardware, yeah,
So Shishir, this was my point actually. We deployed a lot of PLIs in building up our this electronic supply chain. We were doing a lot of backward integration. And suddenly, there is somebody who says that I'll put reciprocal tariffs if you don't buy from my companies, or you put, unnecessary. We are developed and developing country narrative, right? And suddenly now we also want to get into clean tech manufacturing at a much bigger, much bigger speed. So do you think that, these type of things really hurt India's interest and even America's interest, because most of the things would have come from China to India, right? And now suddenly you will see every door which continues to open in China, now they will stay open.
Look, can we do anything if a country wants to put higher tariffs or reciprocal tariffs on us? Probably very little. But the important thing is that a good negotiator always tries and sees what is the other side trying to achieve. Is it merely, something spontaneously that a leader thought he would do? No, not at all. If people call him a maverick, then it's completely wrong. Probably the best definition is exactly how the Top Gun Maverick behaved. You felt at the start of the movie that he was a maverick. But by the time the movie ended, you knew that every action of Tom Cruise in that movie had an objective. And I think that's what a good negotiator. So if we know what the US is wanting, we have a strong bargaining power. The kind of market we have, the kind of market that exists in India, huge bargaining power. Our continuously increasing leadership role of the global south, huge bargaining power. Our common enemy approach, there are lots of others who are going to be affected by reciprocal tariffs. So these are things, Akhilesh. So my view would be, we've got a lot invested into, as you said, into our schemes, Make in Bharat, Atmanirbharta and all that. We're not going to let go of it. We'll show the mirror to a negotiator. Look, what you're wanting is exactly what we also want. You want something for made in the US, we want something for made in India. And I think in the final run, good sense prevails, and all good negotiators know that a final deal is only possible when you walk out of the room either both feeling equally happy or both feeling equally unhappy. And in this case...
Were you happy when you read the joint statement?
Look, I must say I was unhappy the first time I read it, but like all good bureaucrats and negotiators, I read it a second time and became much happier.
So what was the happier quotient?
Look, the happy thing, again, because I've been part of WTO where so often we've had ministerial conferences which have not even had a joint statement. So the mere fact that you had a joint statement is a very positive thing. Second, acknowledging the differences also, I think, is a very, very important thing. You know, two huge, big democracies, you know, very different democracies, acknowledging the differences. Obviously, there's always something that is said in private and there's always something that's said in public. And you've got to find the right words there. My feeling is, and again, I hope I'm right and I touch wood, India and US actually will have a very positive relationship in the coming few years.
And do you see the mention of I2, U2 and IMAC in the joint statement as a statement of positive, you know, forward-looking statement, or you think that this could be a point of retaliation from Indian side?
Look, it's clear. I mean, why would the United States in a joint statement with India want to talk about, let's say, IMEC? IMEC doesn't involve the US. Starts from India, ends with Europe. But the US sees it as a very strong counter-narrative against China. And that's why the US is so strongly, you know, kind of supporting IMEC. The I2U2 is a very, very important initiative. And I think given what's happening in the Middle East, again, I think that will be very important. But you know, you've hit the nail absolutely brilliantly, Akhilesh, on its head. These are the things that countries like India and US should focus on. Forget the Harley Davidsons and the Bourbon Scotch. Focus on the I2U2s or focus on IMEC.
Sorry, I'm dragging a bit, but you know, there's a last thing on these recent developments. You know, we have seen that Donald Trump withdrew from COP negotiations. We have also seen that he's withdrawing from WHO. The mission statement also says that America will also withdraw from World Bank. So do you think, you know, for infrastructure projects across the world, especially in the emerging economies like India, will get a real, you know, setback if he decides to do this?
Look, World Bank, I don't think, as long as you continue to have the head of the World Bank being from the United States, the US is not going to withdraw from the World Bank. I'm very certain. You know, the World Bank and IMF are a classic example of dividing the spoils. Between the European Union and the US, through the weighted system of voting, they have a majority in both. So the EU is told, you head IMF and I'll head the World Bank. So it's a classic, you know, divide and spoil. So I don't see them heading out of it. But yes, it is likely, especially on the climate change agenda, I think globally the agenda is going to be markedly different. Again, look at the advantage. You know, in India, we've for long been saying that coal, agreed, is a very bad, you know, emitter. Can India do away with coal immediately? No. And I think here is Donald Trump, and we can actually, you know, stand behind him and what he says, just to ensure, yes, we'll work towards cleaner coal, we'll work towards more efficient coal. But it, you know, so we've got to look for an advantage there. My sense, Akhilesh, is climate change is going to come in with a more different agenda. You're not going to do away with fossil fuels or plan to do away with completely, you know. And that's where, and thanks for mentioning the think tank that we are setting up, we really want to look at not just energy security, but very importantly, energy affordability. You know, you could set up completely clean energy processes, but would the last village in my northeast state be able to buy that electricity for 24 hours? No. So I think the climate agenda must need to get in energy security and energy affordability, and the kind of statements that President Trump is making actually helps us do that.
Thank you, Shishir. You know, this is wonderful conversation which is going on. Thanks, both of you gentlemen, for devoting your time and helping us enrich ourselves. There is a time for one question. If somebody wants to ask, you can raise your hand. Otherwise, we'll have to wind up the conversation. I think you have enlightened them enough. There is no question I could see. So thank you, sir. Thank you very much. Thanks.
Unless I just want to add one thing last. See, as far as technology into the infrastructure thing is concerned, it's not going to be much affected, believe me. It's okay, there may be some temporary delays or something, but ultimately it will, because the way we are going forward and developing the things, I'm very confident that software, I said, there is absolutely no issues, but hardware also, the rapid progress which is being made, maybe some component may be missing for some time, but India will bounce back very quickly if that happens. I am sure it's not going to happen.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. Thanks for your time. Thank you.